Thanks everybody for coming today. And most of all, thank you to Barrett Doyle for coming from Boston to speak to our Cleveland groups. We are most grateful. Today's presentation is sponsored by Voice of the Faithful, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, National Survivors Network, and Code Purple. That's actually RC Code Purple, a new local investigative organization dedicated to the exchange of information among Catholic laity. Code Purple comes from the hospital code that is called when things are in emergency beyond blue. We think that the Catholic laity is in tremendous emergency today. That's why we call this group Code Purple. One housekeeping note. We will be taking up a free will collection today. Anne, bless her heart, does not charge a fee, but we offer to pay her travel expenses. And I don't think any of our groups have any money, so we would appreciate contributions to pay for expenses. Anne is a graduate of Harvard. Her husband is a high school graduate of St. Ignatius here in Cleveland. They live outside Boston. They have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, ages 17 to 24. A lot of nice school bills in that group, aren't there? Anne co-founded Coalition of Catholics and Survivors, a Boston activist group. She's co-director of Bishop Accountability, and I'm going to let her tell us all about Bishop Accountability. But I will tell you they have an annual budget of $250,000. They have 5 employees, 4 part-time. Anne handles public relations and donor relations for Bishop Accountability. Another important point, the number of unique visitors to the site at Bishop Accountability. In 2005, it was 185,000. In 2006, 360,000. And in 2007, 748,000. So growing tremendously. We are very, very grateful for the truth tellers. We are grateful to you, Anne Barrett Doyle, and thank you for coming today.
Hi everyone, great to see you. My airfare was really cheap. We took AirTran, it was $89. And I stayed at the Red Roof last night because my mother-in-law does not have internet, so and I really needed it. It's a real pleasure to be here. Cleveland is my second home. As Nancy said, my husband graduated from St. Raphael Grade School and St. Ignatius. And as a matter of fact, we moved back to the Boston area from New York when our kids were little, and they were just all decked out in Cleveland Indians gear all the time. And we would go to an occasional game at Fenway when the Indians played, and they would have all their stuff that their grandmother had sent them, all the shirts, and I remember them cheering for Manny Ramirez when he was still on your team, and I would fear for their safety. I'm a native Bostonian myself, and I was just horrified at this, and I'll never forget my brother-in-law here finally saying to them, "It is time for you to cheer for your home team." He thought these kids aren't even going to be socially viable if they don't stop, so I was really glad about that. Okay, well, obviously we raised our kids Catholic and we're still Catholic, and let me just tell you a bit about our agenda today. Who we are, a bit about me, which you've heard, and I'll tell you a bit about bishopaccountability.org as well. Bishop Lennon's role in the Boston Archdiocese abuse cover-up. Child sexual abuse by Cleveland clergy. This is something that doesn't get a lot of attention, and there's a lot we don't know. And holding your bishops accountable, tips and strategies. I mean, don't hold your breath, but we have a few things that we know have worked elsewhere, and a Q&A if anyone's interested. When this was the newspaper that broke it all open for all of us on January 6, 2002, we learned that Cardinal Law had winked and nodded basically while he knew kids were being raped by John Gagan. And that mobilized me personally. I'd never done anything in terms of reforming the church, or I wasn't really an activist at all, but after two or three Sundays of headlines like this, I went to the cathedral thinking I would confront cardinal law and do what? I don't know, talk some sense into him. Instead, I met other people outside, and we formed a protest organization, and we organized those early protests you saw of Boston Catholics out in front of the cathedral. But what happened was that protest ran its course. Really, it only does good if the news media is covering it. And the news media did cover it a lot in 2002, but it really died down. And at that point, I met another Catholic parent named Terry McKiernan. Actually, Terry and I had met each other on the protest lines. And Terry recognized that this was a very important moment in the Catholic Church. He's an editor and a document management expert. And when Cardinal Law's organization became the first diocese in the history of the world to have to surrender its secret personnel documents locked in its archive, Terry recognized that someone needed to collect all this information that was being forced out of the Boston Archdiocese by legal action. Today, we are the largest independent Catholic website in the world. People visit our website seeking information about accused priests and church documents, where we are just basically researchers. We talk all the time to journalists, to abuse survivors, to prosecutors, legislators, anybody. I mean, we get calls from DAs wanting do you know how to track down an affidavit? We have a tremendous number of documents. We have 100,000 online, and we have 800,000 paper copies that we eventually will get online someday. The goal is, we are in discussion with a university. This archive will end up in a university someday. We have documents from dioceses all over the country. We have a priest database of 3,200 accused priests, all the grand jury reports, the Vatican reports pertaining to the crisis. We basically are a library dedicated to this. So let's look at Richard Lennon. It's my contention that he owes you, the people of Cleveland, a full accounting of his role in the Boston Archdiocese's cover-up of child sexual abuse by priests. Yes, it's in the past, but it bears on today's pressing issue of his trustworthiness. If he cannot tell the whole truth about what he did in Boston, there is reason to question whether he's telling the whole truth about what he's doing here in Cleveland. Let's first look at how he himself publicly has characterized his knowledge of and involvement in the crisis. When he became acting bishop of Boston, he told the Globe that when he had worked at the Chancery, he knew nothing about the extent of the sexual abuse crisis. He could have stopped there, but he kept talking about it. He said to the Boston Herald, "The work with the allegations and those who are working with them on those matters, I have had no involvement at all," Lennon said. After a follow-up question, he said that the investigators' procedures, their policies, the way they do things, "I have never been involved in that, sir." He also told the Globe on December 18th of last year, so this is in a 2003 article, they're reporting this, that he had never had any documents detailing the offenses of any accused priests. And then finally, to your own Cleveland Plain Dealer, when David Briggs covered the fact that he had been appointed here, when all the facts come out, they will show that the abuse practices were closely guarded secrets known only by a few, Lennon said. "I feel I did the best that I could in the situation I was in. Could I have done more? I would have had to know more to have done more." So in 2003, the judge in the civil case brought by the victims of Paul Shanley forced out 140 priest personnel files from the secret archives in Boston. We assembled all of those. Terry shuttled back and forth between the courthouse closet where they'd been dumped and the law firm, and we have the complete archive. And we're able to examine objectively if Richard Lennon was telling the truth when he said he knew nothing about the scope of the crisis.